So thank you for taking the time to participate in the training. It's much appreciated. I know you're busy. I just thought I'd give you a brief introduction as to why we're doing the Credit 360 reporting. So the QONI Group Executive Board have set the goal of environmental reporting. And some divisions already do this. The outbound division has been doing this since 2011. And their goal this year is to add a further 2 divisions to that, one of which is GTS and the other is VFS. And there's 3 reasons predominantly why they want us to do environmental reporting. The first is that it's often mandatory. There are 142 regulatory instruments addressing sustainability across 30 countries. So one of the key drivers is the fact that it's mandatory in some countries. The other reason is actually investor demand. I think we gave you a link when we were initially explaining about being a data provider and Credit 360 to some OCOM research, and basically they're a rating agency in sustainable investments, and they've got a volume of over 520 billion euros, so quite large. And at the moment, QONI is rated as prime. And at the moment, there's only 3 of 40 travel companies that are actually qualified for prime status. And that basically means that we're rated as the most sustainable travel company, which is something QONI Group are keen for us to maintain. And that obviously acknowledges the fact that to do that, we need your commitment and your help with finding the data and uploading the data. And I guess the last key driver in environmental reporting is actually so we can monitor our own environmental performance. Essentially, if we don't manage our environmental performance, it means we can't, if we don't measure it, it means we can't manage it. And if we don't manage it, it means that we can't really look to see where we can improve. And to give you a quick example of that, QONI Switzerland noticed when they first started doing environmental reporting that they were using 10 times as much paper consumption than all of the other offices in Scandinavia. So that kind of gave them a little bit of an indication and raised a red flag that they could perhaps, investigate that and look to make some savings. So it's for those reasons as well. It means that we can benchmark across the other divisions, benchmark and compare against other similar sized units, and find some best practice and learn from each other, really. So that's essentially the drivers for the environmental reporting. And what we can do as well, when we've actually got all of the data uploaded, if you're interested, we can provide these breakdowns so you can see how your office compares to other divisions and other offices of a similar size. But we'll keep you posted on that. So the aim of today really is to briefly give you an overview on the Credit 360 software so you can understand how to actually do the data uploading yourselves and ask any questions you might have. So I'm going to hand over to Tom Caldicott, who is the Implementation Manager for Credit 360, and he's going to run through the software training with us now.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Lynn. I'll connect to my desktop at the moment. If anyone's having any problems seeing my desktop, if they could just let me know over the audio, or if they could let me know via the chat. But you should now be able to see on the WebEx a login for the QONI website for Credit 360. So on the login page that you'll see on www.qoni.credit360.com, you'll see an area for a username and a password, first and foremost. This will be sent out to you via a welcome email, but typically it's first name and surname, and you'll get to set your password yourself by going through the have you forgotten your password, and it will give you as many some options to reset that and set it as your own. So I'm actually going to show you today what it's like to enter data into the Credit 360 system, and then what it would be like for the person who's requested that data to be entered to receive that data and to approve it. So without further ado, I'll log in as a typical GTS user. This will be personalized for yourself when you log in. The very first screen you'll see the first time you log in is an administration area, and this will allow you to update any personal details that you've got, or your email address, and things like your culture settings, so where decimal places are shown in the input forms. We also, along the top, have something called Client Connect. Now this is really useful because it has a lot of training information on. So if you're unsure of what you should be doing within the Credit 360 system, you can click on the Client Connect. And we have something called the Knowledge Base, which has a series of training materials and videos. So for example, today, we're running through using data, approving data and providing data. So there's 2 already populated videos on there, which will help you through the process. Going back to the site, once you've logged in more than once, you'll be taken to a home page. This home page will be split into 2 areas. We'll have a My Data area, which will show you all of the questionnaires which you're being asked to complete. It will also have an area for charts and other information. So an example of this is an example of some energy data and some carbon data which has been set up for this demo. I think Stephanie will be implementing her own chart that she wants to share with you. The most important area for you will be the My Data tab, which will give you, like I said, a list of different questionnaires that can be filled in. Now you'll notice that some of these questionnaires are red. That's because they were due earlier in the year, so they're actually past their due date, and we're expected to fill these in. The list of questionnaires that you'll get will correspond to what you're being asked to complete. So you might not see all 5 of these questionnaires, you may only see 1 or 2, and that's what you're being requested to fill out. So if I go into the energy consumption chart, energy consumption questionnaire, we can see here this is a typical questionnaire, and it has the questions on the left-hand side, units in the middle, and an area to input your text on the right-hand side. So in this case, it's asking us for information about the number of people working in an area, the amount of electricity that you're purchasing, and also the amount of fuels. Up in the top corner here, you will see the name of the site for which you're being asked to submit this data. In this case, it just says test site. This will be the name of your individual area. Okay, so you've got a data area where you can type in numbers. So in this case, it's asking us for the number of personnel in headcount terms. I enter a number in there. It briefly goes yellow, which means it's saving it to the server, and then I can type this in. That saving it to the server just means that if you were to, for some reason, lose internet connection or accidentally close this window, that data will be there next time you log in. You also have, in some areas, places where you can select the unit. So, for example, we have area of building used by Curoni Group, and you can select that in meters squared or feet squared. We also have conditional questions. So, for example, it's asking you here whether the energy was purchased from an electricity supplier. If I uncheck that box, you'll notice a number of questions disappear. In this example, I'm going to check that, and I might fill it out with the information that I know. So 500. There are also a number of areas within the system where it will ask you for the cost. In this case, you can see that there's a drop-down menu for some major currencies. However, if the currency that you pay your bills in isn't in there, we'd ask that you use a website for currency conversion and convert the numbers back to Swiss francs, to CHF. So I'll fill that out again. Some questions will look at the previous year of data that's been entered and check to see whether that's whether the number that you've entered in for this period is greater or less than the number that was entered in previously. If it's significantly higher, it may ask you for justification. So in this case, if I was to enter 1,000 into this box, you'll notice that it's giving me a little yellow exclamation mark, which means that it wants an explanation of the data that's been put in there. So if I click on that, it says that the first year I put in 10 tons, and now I've put in 1,000 tons. So that might just be that I've got the wrong unit of measure, or there was a mistake in my original submission. You can therefore leave a message to whoever is completing the form as to why that's correct, if you believe it's correct, or if it's not correct, I might want to go back and just edit that to be a more reasonable number. And you'll notice the yellow exclamation mark then disappears. Down the left-hand side, we also have an area for collecting data against the indicators. So against every single entry point, you can write notes. So I might write, I'm not sure about this factor. And you'll notice I get a little yellow post-it note to indicate that some information has been saved against that. Or you might also want to attach a file. So wherever possible, if you can attach invoice data to back up your claims, that's massively beneficial. So if we save that, you'll notice that I've got a little indication that there's an attachment. And you can attach files which have comments against them as well. Another useful piece of functionality is that you can actually view the previous year's data. So you can see that in 2012 there was also 100 people working in the department, and the number I've entered is equal to that. If I was to edit that to be 150, you'll notice that that chart changes. Once I'm happy with the data that I've put into this questionnaire, I can then I can add notes against the entire questionnaire and attach files such as invoices, or if you had to make any calculations, you can also attach those to the questionnaire, or you can just submit it for approval, which will be sent to your whoever has asked you to complete this form, to make sure that the values that they put in, the values you put into this form, they are happy with. So I might submit this for approval and leave a note saying, I think this is all correct. And that data is now being sent to the data approver to just make sure that they're happy with what's there. I'll just stop at that point. Has anyone got any questions with what we've run through so far?
I got a question. We have 5 offices in Germany, so I have to do this per office?
Yep, so you will be, if you've been asked to fill out for all of the offices, then you will get different sites along the top here. So where it says test site, you might get the different offices.
Mm-hmm.
If for some reason you've been asked to fill it out on a higher level, it will just tell you that maybe Germany on the top there. But it will be dependent on the exact sites that you've been set up on. Does that answer the question? Okay, I'll move on. So the next step is I'll now log in as a data approver and show you exactly what it would look like for the person who receives this information. So if I log out of the system, I can now log in as a GTS approver. And you'll notice that they have a similar page when they log in. However, their page looks slightly different. It's got data which is pending your approval, data which has not been submitted yet, and data which has already been approved. You'll notice that the energy consumption questionnaire that we've just filled out is pending approval. So if I look in that, you'll notice that we get the form that we've just been looking at previously. And you can view the comments that have been raised, and view the files. Now the data approver has three options at this stage. If you are happy with the data that's gone into the system, you can just approve it, and that will enter those values into the database. If there's something that you wish to question, or you'd like to send this questionnaire back to whoever's been filling it out, you can return it and make comments. So you might say, I'm not sure about the data in this, please provide evidence. Or you could, if you know that there's a mistake in here, for example, you can see that somebody's left a decimal place out, or it's in the wrong unit, you can actually make it editable and change the values yourself. In this case, we're going to query one of the numbers that's in here. And there's a special piece of functionality to do that. In the same way that we uploaded notes or we uploaded files, you can click and create a query. So you can query a specific value, saying, please look into this. And you have the option then to urgently notify the user, so it will send an instant email to that user saying that somebody has raised a query. Or if you don't check that urgent box, it will wait until the end of the day, batch all queries up together, and send it to the data provider. So you can then assign users. So if, for example, you're waiting on a piece of data from a different user, I might assign this to them. And you have a full list of the users using the system. Okay, so in this case, I'm just going to add a comment. So actually, I'll close it, because then you can see that there's an open query. And because I'm not happy with this data, because of that query, I'm going to return it to my delegate, saying, please answer the queries. And I can return that now. So that has now been sent back to our data provider. So if I log back out of this system and log back in as a data provider, you'll see that that survey has now reappeared on my site with this query against it. So once you're happy that you've done everything you can to resolve that query, you can go through, you can respond and resolve, and you can put, this is correct. Please see attached file. And then you might want to add a note or a file to that. Now you'll notice that that has changed from being a red question mark to a green tick. So I'll resubmit that for approval. So that's the kind of process that you'll go through as you're completing these surveys. Again, at this stage, I'll stop some questions before we run through the different surveys that you might be asked to fill out. So at this stage, has anyone got any questions? Okay, so if people, question from Hamza, if people are leaving during the year, or staff joined within the year, how do you include that in the headcount? And Lynn, is that something that you, have you got a set way that you account for the number of staff? Is it at the start of the year or the end of the year, or is it an average?
I'm not sure. I will have to check that with Stephanie, I'm afraid. I will make sure when we send the follow-up emails that we include information on the head count, just so that I can make sure that we're doing it the same as the other divisions within QONI Group. So I'll get back to you on that one.
Okay, brilliant.
Any other questions?
Okay,
Okay.
At this okay, so the next step now, I'll just walk you through the other questionnaires you might be asked to fill out. So if I go back to my data on the data entry screen, you'll notice, because I've submitted that questionnaire, that's now disappeared. That's not on the data I'm entering now, and it's moved over to data I'm submitting. You might also be asked to fill out information on water consumption. This is slightly easier. You've only got being asked for your water consumption in cubic meters and the cost per cubic meter of water. Now, in this case, it might be that you have to go and talk to your landlord or the person you're letting the building from to get that information, but usually they're quite forthcoming with that information. Again, you've got this selection of different currencies, and it's really important in this case that you provide as much evidence as possible. So we've asked to upload an invoice or other supporting documentation. Again, you can just select a file from the drop-down menu. The next questionnaire that you might be asked to fill out is the paper usage. This is slightly different in that the paper usage is recorded on a table and the fields are actually automatically calculated. So whenever you see this grey box with an FX, that means the system is completing that automatically. And in this case, we're adding in individual types of paper. So that's office paper, envelopes, invoices, and that kind of thing. So you'll have a pop-out menu where you can add information about each of those types of paper use. Again, you've got an area here where you can attach files. Okay, does anyone have any questions about those two forms?
Tom, was this the data area where they could do it monthly if they didn't want to do it at the end of the year?
Yeah, that's absolutely. So
yeah.
You can add these as you go along. So this will automatically update your yearly data as you input it. So I could just add another paper type now. And I could save that. Right, tell me, I need to fill out these other areas. But if I filled that out, we'd have another line in this table, which would automatically go onto your annual total. Okay, so if we move back and look at the final form, which is the waste recycling, you've got all of the different types of waste that you might collect. So paper to be recycled, you've got carton, plastic, e-waste, other types of waste. And you're being asked to fill out the amount and the cost of disposing of this waste. You're also being asked to attach a file, a supporting invoice. So again, if I just attach my energy invoice, and that gets uploaded. In this case, it would more likely be a waste invoice. And you fill that out for all the information that you know. Again, in some cases, it may be your landlord who's providing with the waste treatment. You might need to go and talk to them.
I would just quickly add here, I know a couple of offices sometimes don't have their waste collected, and people just go and put it in the kind of the big skips outside their office building, so they don't know the weight. If this is the case, then if you can just add a note in next to that field just to explain that, so that we know and can show that to the auditors, that would be great.
Yeah. And just to reiterate, if you want to add a note, you just click this button here and you can save a note. So we take this directly to the skip. affiliates. Okay? And that's it in terms of the forms that you'll be asked to fill in. The other important points to note is that at every stage of this where something changes about one of your questionnaires, you'll be sent an email. So you don't need to be constantly logging into the system to check if anything's changed. If a piece of data you've submitted has been approved, you'll get an email. Or if a piece of data you've submitted has been returned to you, you'll also get an email. So when you need to be doing things within the Credit 360 system, you'll be informed via email. At this stage, that's everything that I wanted to cover off in this